got children, some children not got their parents, you know, or they got one mum, and then, you know, she's drinking maybe, do you know what I mean, or on drugs,
Yeah.
or whatever. You know, you get occasional child that's going wild a bit, you know, and they're being naughty, and they're not, you know, they ain't got no guidance, basically, by no one anyway, you know what I mean? And then they leave school, yeah, and they get a job, and they hate the world.
Yeah.
They hate the world. No one's loved them, do you know what I mean? Everyone needs love.
Yeah.
You know, so they can turn, they're quite intelligent, but they can turn quite nasty to people when they want to rebel, you know, and all this kind of stuff.
Well, in all honesty, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the points I was going to make during this episode talking about childhood is a lot of the trauma and a lot of things that people go through when they're older is a lot of time, most of the time actually, it's, you know, according to science and according to psychology anyway, a large amount of it is attributed to childhood trauma, if you see what I mean. A lot of, you know, obviously it would affect the child there and then, depending on what the trauma is, but it tends to have more of an effect when people get older. It tends to, you know, come out in their behaviour, or it affects them, you know, on a mental level, or an emotional level, or on a physical level, even depending on what, you know, sometimes people have PTSD, you know, post-traumatic stress disorder, you know, related to, you know, physical violence or sexual violence, or even psychological, you know, because you also get people that can manipulate people psychologically to the point where they are, you know, they are taken advantage of, if you see what I mean. They are abused, if you see what I mean. You know, they make the, you know, sometimes people can degrade someone to the point, you know what I mean, where they become completely demoralised, I guess, and
well, I know all about, you know, I kind of know all about it, you know, because I met a girl, you know what I mean, and she was really abused by her stepdad, you know what I mean, from a young age.
Yeah. They can start loving themselves, you know, they can, you know, find it hard to connect with other people, find relationships hard, not only relationships with a partner, but relationships in general with people, and relationships probably even harder with a partner, and also obviously when it comes to intimacy as well, if someone has been abused, you know, unfortunately, you know, it can affect their intimacy with, you know, going forward, if you see what I mean.
It affects their whole life, you know.
Exactly.
You know, it's with them, it lives with them like a shadow.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
You know, it's their shadow.
Yeah.
You know, basically your past is your shadow when you think about it. It's like your shadow.
Yeah. Well,
and it follows you wherever you go.
Yeah. Well, what's funny too is that a lot of people don't even realise that a lot of trauma later on in life is directly related to your childhood, and that's what's so funny, you know.
Of course it is.
How,
you know, it's like even if you got attacked by a dog at the age of 4 or 5, you're probably not going to like them for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Things like that.
You're going to have like a,
or little things about, you know, even with food, you know, if someone's forced you to eat something that you didn't like or something, you're not going to like it for the rest of your life, do you know what I mean? And you forced it in the first place, you know, when you could have liked it when you worked out for yourself, do you know what I mean? You know, so yeah, there's like lots of psychology things, isn't there, to do with children and things. You know, it's like even with art. You know, if I was an art teacher, say for instance, and 20 children come in, and they've had their day or their weekend, you know, it's a Monday, okay? So I get them to draw a picture of something that happened the weekend.
Yeah.
You know, so they all draw their little pictures, and all their pictures would be a little bit different, you know, because I find we can all pick up crayons and do a bit of art. You know, you look at children's art, and sometimes they can kind of tell you what's going on at home.
What's going on at home, exactly. You know, they express themselves through.
Sometimes, you know, a child's art could be really negative, and it might have like a bit of blood on it, you know, and some knives, and it sort of things. How did they sort of think? How did they draw that? You know, it's only because they've seen it.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe they watched a film. You know, like, you know, mum's put a film on.
Yeah, that wasn't suitable for.
Yeah, you know, now they're you know, remembering what they've seen, or you know, if say two parents are really sort of bullying the child, or they don't have to look at, you know, don't love the child at all, the child will really be quite neglected in life, you know, and find it very difficult to learn what love is.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, like I say, I think we're all a little bit different, you know, and we deal with different things, you know, and we learn in our own different ways about different things, you know, and there's a lot to learn about. You know, it's like your personal circumstances during your childhood probably a lot different to mine, but kind of the same.
Yeah.
You know, because at school you kind of, you know, I did anyway, you know, you get the odd person into a fight or something, you know, at school, and you've got to protect yourself. You know, and you probably had to do that the same thing when you were a child as well.
Of course, yeah. I was never the trouble. The thing is, right, is that growing up in the environment that I grew up in, right, I was never looking for trouble. To be honest, I was never the type to look for trouble.
No, same here.
But I soon realised that even though I tried to avoid conflict, sometimes it was unavoidable. I remember even being young, like you said, even being in primary school, and I remember, like, you know, one or two lads that would come up to me and try to be a bit of a bully kind of thing towards me. And, you know, I remember being young and being at first thinking, you know what, I could talk to this person and try to avoid it, and we don't need to fight. You know, I remember even being young thinking like this, which is really quite funny when you think about it, really. You know, someone, you know, being so young, able to, you know, have that level of critical thinking that you think you can have a conversation with the person and be able to avoid it, if you see what I mean, come to some kind of mutual understanding and, you know, through conversation and be able to avoid it. But there are a few people that obviously they were young and they weren't, you know, it didn't work, if you see what I mean. So I soon realised that in order to deal with certain situations that I too had to become aggressive, if you see what I mean. And it got to a point where as soon as I realised someone was going to be aggressive, was like, I realised they were on the offensive, I would be on the offensive first. I wasn't going to wait, you know what I mean? I wasn't going to wait for someone to get too close. And, you know, as soon as I realised that they planned to hit me or planned to hurt me or something in some way, and they got too close, I was, you know what I mean? I was throwing mine, you know, I was throwing my left and right hooks and right jabs and uppercuts and, you know, kicks and kicks and punches just like, you know, anyone else, if you see what I mean. And I remember, thankfully as well, like, I've said it a few times, so I won't really, you know, regurgitate it too much, but I had a stepfather in my life for a few years. I think for about, I can't remember how long he was in our lives, but I think for about, I don't know, about 7 years in total, I think, roughly. And because he was very tall, you know, he was you know, a Bayesian guy, and he was very tall and very, you know, big and muscular. He was, you know, he could hold himself in you know, in any environment against anyone pretty much, you know, because of his.
Toughened you up a bit.
Yeah, he helped to toughen me up a bit. Don't get me wrong, he was a bit too rough. I'm not going to lie to you. There were times when I was young and he would hit me a little bit too hard, and I think, you know, like, I'm supposed to be your stepson, mate. Like, you know what I mean? Even though we didn't have a great relationship, I'm not going to lie, we never really had like a real great. It was okay. It was never a great relationship. And pretty much when him and my mum split up, everyone was kind of a bit happier, to be very honest, you know, that, you know, because obviously their marriage was a bit chaotic, but I won't go into that because that's personal. But he was a bit too rough, but I must say, like you said, at the same time, it did toughen me up as well. Like, sometimes we like play fight together, or we do like wrestling together, because he used to like wrestling and I used to like to watch wrestling, you know, with him kind of thing. And then sometimes afterwards we play around or whatever, and sometimes he'd hit me, and like I said, sometimes I think afterwards, like, you know, I'm just a child, mate, like, you know, you're hitting me a bit too hard here, like, you're trying to break my rib or something, like, you know. Yeah. And I remember even one time, I'd fallen at school, like I told you about, and busted, like, cut open all my chin and shit, like busted open my chin and had to go.
I've done the same thing.
You've done the same thing?
You, didn't I?
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it?
Really had stitches in it.
Very same.
Cut it on a gutter like that.
Isn't that funny, mate? Very similar story.
Good.
And then, yeah, I had to have stitches and shit, and I had to wear, like, this thing on my head. It was awful, mate, because, like, you know, I used to feel really embarrassed because I was young, and I used to have to wear, like, this. It almost looked not like a crash helmet type thing, but because I had these stitches and because of how I fell, I had to wear this thing that held, like, my chin in place, kind of thing. You know, stop my chin from moving around too much for a few weeks. But just for a few weeks.
Did they pick on you?
No, no one really did. But I had to stay home for a couple of weeks anyway, if you see what I mean, to recover after that, if you see what I mean, because, you know, that's what the doctor said to do anyway, at the hospital. But yeah, I remember we went to the sea Because obviously going to, over there, being in the Caribbean, obviously you've got the, the wonderful thing of being able to go in the sea and that, and the sea is very good for recovery, if you see what I mean, especially for wounds and cuts and scrapes, and even if you've got a cold, people tell you go to the sea, go and have a, a sea bath and, swim in the sea, and it will get, bring out all the, clear out your nasal passage and all that type of shit, So I remember us going to the beach one day, and we were playing again, doing wrestling, and my mum said to him, "Be careful, he's just had stitches 3 days ago."
And he's just a child.
And he's just a child. And he's got 12 stitches under my chin. And I just had this, had taken this thing off so I could go in the sea. And we were playing. What did he do? Chuck me in the water. Chin came open. Back to the doctor. My mum was, you can imagine, my mum was not even angry. Angry is not the word. She was infuriated.
Confused.
She was infuriated with my stepfather. She, because she told him to be careful. Just had stitches. Had to go back to the doctor and pay more money, because over there, if you go to the doctor, you can have stitches. You want to see someone quickly, you got to pay.
Right.
So you could pay to have his. I had to pay. It's like 100 and something Barbados.
Okay, that's different here, isn't it?
So, but if you go to the hospital, it's free.
Yeah.
But you might have to wait 6 to 8 hours.
Yeah.
And you might not always have 6 to 8 hours to wait around, and you know what I mean. So you go to the local doctor, he's going to charge you. So I go back to the doctor, stitch up again, same process again.
I mean, I remember when I was a bit, young boy, talking about 8, 9. I used to sort of go on these high walls, jump off of them. I was be quite a dangerous child a little bit, always a bit adventurous as well, I mean, like your child is a bit different to mine a little bit, like you're saying that your dad was a bit, your stepdad, that is, a wrestler a bit.
Yeah.
Well, I had a stepdad too, and he's a lovely man. I think I personally love him a lot more than I do my dad in a funny way, my real dad.
Yeah.
My real dad, I love him too.
Yeah.
But he was more of a bit of a drinker, and I felt like he kind of neglected me, and he was a bit rude to me when I was a child or whatever,
Yeah.
But I think he was trying to sort of like be cruel to be kind to me, cause
Okay.
it doesn't matter, I just feel like, you were sort of like resting, where my stepdad, he was more into the countryside, you know what I mean, and nature, and he'd play nature games with me, and we'd never do any wrestling at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like I say, I think we've all got a bit of a different child here, and it's quite interesting, really, isn't it, to talk about? And it's like you say you didn't really have a dad, and as you do bring up that fact, you know what I mean, you kind of don't know that when you're a young baby, or 3 or 4, but as you mature as a man in a funny way, because you haven't had a dad, you get stronger as a person, in a funny way, where some children who've had their mum and dads, they don't get that strength, because they're being looked after and comfort all the time and spoiled.
Yeah.
I mean, like some families are really sort of like putting their children in a nest and trying to protect them from this evil world, or the way the world is, they're trying to protect them.
The trouble is, though, right, mate, one thing that I will say, I will speak on, that I think is important as well, and some people might disagree with me, and that's fine.
I do.
It's only my opinion.
I disagree.
But what I will say is that there are a lot of single parent households where a lot of young male sons are being raised in the household and coming up. And a lot of the time, as you get older, when you get to a certain age, and you're kind of the man of the house because you're the only man in the house, sometimes there's this thing where we develop this thing where we have to become the man of the house, if you see what I mean. And sometimes even at a young age, you can feel like that. You can feel like you've got to be your mother's protector. And if your mother's struggling as well, financially as well, with everything else, when you become of a certain age as a young man, it's transitioning into becoming a man, you start to feel obligated to want to help, and to do what the man of the house should do, if you see what I mean. The man of the house that's missing,
DIY.
if you see what I mean.
DIY.
All that type of shit. And sometimes, if you've got siblings as well, and you're the oldest son, let's say, and your mum, you know what I mean, it's just your mum, single parent household, but you've got siblings, sometimes you become almost like a father in some cases to the young, you know, some men do, if you see what I mean, some young men do feel like that, they've become almost like a father to their younger siblings, where they have to look after them pretty much most of the time.
I mean,
and I think personally that it's not really fair. It's not really fair, especially when you're a young man, like you're 13 years old and you're already quite mature, and you're thinking to yourself, you know what, my mum's struggling, and you know, really and truly, I don't feel like right asking her for money, or you know, I feel obligated to help, or obligated to do this or do that. Then really and truly, you should be able to still be able to grow up and not have, you know, that's really and truly, that's not really your responsibility as a son, if you see what I mean. You know, it is when you get older, when you become a man, you know, that is your responsibility, you know, to help your parents, look after your parents, whatever else. But when you're a child, you should be allowed to be able to be a child, and to be able to grow up and to go to school and be a child, experience, you know, have to do the things that a child does and a young teenager does, without having to feel overburdened by responsibility of trying to become the man of your home, because there is no man of the home, you know, because, you know, the husband, you know, that, you know, your father's, you know, either left, or your parents have divorced, or, you know, someone's passed away, or whatever the case may be. And I'm just saying, I think personally, you know, it's got to a point where it's all too prevalent in a lot of societies today, where the man has to become a man at a very young age because there's no man in the house, and it's not always fair. You know, it's.
So I think, like, it's all down to, in a kind of way, the government, I blame, in a funny way, you know. You know, at the end of the day, they're the boss, aren't they? I mean, they're the manager, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just feel like they don't do, the government really, do enough for children, you know. I think, like, every child at school, if they go to school, you know, like, so I personally think they should go at the age of 10. Have a childhood first, then go to school.
Yeah.
Then they can start learning a lot, you know. But it's difficult, you know, because some children need help, and some children don't. Do you know what I mean? It depends, you know.
Yeah.
But I personally think it should be law that a child shouldn't start until 10. Okay, so they can have a bit of time with their family before they become you know, in this real world. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In a kind of way.
Yeah.
And then when they leave school, the government should guarantee every child a job, one way or another. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
You know, by law. Every child should have a home and a garden, you know what I mean? By law as well, you know. All these kind of things. And they should be also educated in philosophy.
Yeah.
You know, and the problem is, even like I told you about the teachers, if they're not educated in philosophy, they're bad teachers. If the government aren't educated in philosophy, they're not going to be very good government either. Simple. They don't care or don't think, or they just live in their own world or care about themselves, because they haven't got the brains about philosophy itself, do you know what I mean, or understanding of other things and other living things and all this kind of stuff, do you know what I mean? No compassion, so on. You know, like I say, philosophy is very important. You know, I feel like if philosophy was at school and children guaranteed a job when they leave school, this world would be a beautiful world today, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, and if they want so many cars around, for instance, that would make it better, do you know what I mean? And maybe if they want so much drink about or whatever, that would make the world better. Or if it, you know, if it wasn't invented and nobody knew about it today, do you know what I mean? You know, it wasn't in the shops, you know.
The thing is that even if you eliminate it, mate, what will happen is that a black market.
No, but no, I'm talking about
will develop for
it didn't exist.
Yeah.
You with me? If Earth didn't make alcohol, you know.
But it would happen.
I know it does.
It would naturally happen anyway.
Say this world didn't grow apple trees or something.
Yeah.
You with me?
Because fermentation just is a natural.
Grapes.
Fermentation is just a natural process, isn't it?
Just pretend.
And I think that's what happened. People realised maybe the animals started eating fermented fruit and started acting strangely. You know what I mean? Acting, you know, that maybe that's how man first discovered that, you know, something about fermented fruit causes some kind of intoxication.
But this is the truth, right? Because I know a little bit about animals, alright? Elephants, at a certain time of year, when the fruit, you know, I can't remember what the tree is.
Yeah.
It might be the tree of life, I can't remember. Or I can't remember. You know, but it's a certain tree, right? The fruit drops off of it, right?
Yeah.
And the elephants won't touch it, right? Even though it's dropped before, they like to wait for it to rot, right? And they all go and feast on it, and it's all rot and get drunk. That's the truth.
Pass out.
You can Google it.
Yeah, I think I've seen it before. I think I've seen videos of it.
And monkeys do the same
and
thing.
they all go to sleep as well. It's quite funny. They all go and lay down. They all go.
Monkeys do the same thing. You know, they kind of get drunk for the day. Do you know what I mean? You know, you can Google it and find out. You know, yourself. But I read that once. You know, and like I say, this world where we have got alcohol, can you imagine if it didn't exist?
Yeah.
I think it would be a better world in a funny way, because we'd be all drinking water or tea. I don't know, do you know what I mean? But you know, just sort of thinking about different angles of our world here. You know, where I feel like the world is like it is, like chaos, because there's no philosophy, basically. You know, simple, isn't it? Really, I think. You know, I mean, even myself, when I left school, I could hardly read or write. I could a little bit, yeah. But I was pretty bad, you know, and I feel like I didn't know much about women, didn't know much about having children or the philosophy of life whatsoever. I would class myself as pretty dumb, you know. I was very good at drawing, you know, but at that age I was pretty dumb when I left school, you know. Didn't know, I had no idea about life itself, you know. And it's taken me 40 years to learn about it. You know what I mean? I'm still learning about it. I don't feel you can ever stop learning about life. Not even when you're 99, you know, you'll be learning that day even, you know what I mean?
It's true.
But, you know, once you do reach your really old age, you sit down in your chair and all you got is your memories, you know, your childhood. Or, you know, what is your childhood after all? I feel like my childhood was even when I got married. If you're with me, you know. You know, you're still learning, aren't you? You know,
I think even as you get older, there is still a certain element of like childish, you know, you know, don't get me wrong, we all mature and we become adults, you know, but there is still a very small element you know, they call it the inner child, is what they call it. And I think everyone has that in them, even as they get older and they mature, you know, that inner, you know, that thing of liking to have a laugh every now and again, or liking to, you know, do something silly or play a practical joke.
Well, it's like me starting the show, spinning in the chair.
Exactly, that type of thing. But it's not pathetic. But like, it's funny. It was silly, and that's what I mean. It's that inner child thing. And I think even as you don't do it all the time as you get older, because obviously life, you know, you live a very mature, responsible life when you become an adult. But every now and again, you know what I mean, you find that moment where, you know, you might get together with friends or whoever, you know, whatever else, and you might have a good time and have a laugh. And, you know, it's reminiscent of when you were young and you used to get together with your friends and play games and have fun and laugh. And, you know, obviously it's a lot less frequent when you become an adult, generally speaking. But yeah.
Well, personally, I feel like, because I live on my own now, and I'm single, I'm independent in a kind of way, I'm sort of having my childhood now in a funny way, you know, because I kind of like do the things that I did when I was 7 or 8 now, do you know what I mean? Where when I was married, I had to do other jobs, you know, and I couldn't do those things anymore, I kind of give those things up. You know, so I'm sort of enjoying my childhood now in a funny way, you know, and they say as you get older, you go to the second childhood or whatever, you know? And it is like, you know, when you have children, there was, you know, they're hard work, aren't they? You know, and you've got to be responsible day after day after day, you know, and then slowly they grow up and leave. And then you can kind of put your feet up, and they might have children, do you know what I mean? And they might sort of say, can I go, you know, they want to go out, can you look after them, do you know what I mean? And you by then you know a lot more, you know, about life, you know, because you've seen it, do you know what I mean? It's quite good fun, life, you know, and you know, I kind of wish I had that at the moment, do you know what I mean? Because, I mean, I've separated, and it's been pretty awful in a kind of way, you know. I've had to found court cases, you know, and it's not gone on my side. And it doesn't in this country, actually, you know, because I've experienced family courts and they're pretty awful, if you ask me. They're not on the children's side whatever, you know, they're more on the mother's side, and that's that, you know.
Yes.
And a lot of women, funny enough, you know, and I'm not putting women down, but sometimes they will lie their head off, right, in the courts, alright, and they think it's for the good. Do you know what I mean? You know, and that's kind of like evil in the world, you know, where they're lying about something.
Yeah.
And, you know, they think it's good for the good of their own children. Do you see what I'm saying? You know, and that's the case in this country and many other countries, you know, especially in this country, you know. And that's why I've found it very difficult to get hold of my children, you know. And they've been snatched away from me, you know. I feel like I've been violated, and I feel like they've been violated too, you know.
Yeah.
Because I would have given them nothing apart from love.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a dangerous person. I mean, I wouldn't even harm an ant, for goodness sake. You know, I'm one of the most compassionate persons that I know.
Yeah.
In a kind of way, you know. I mean, I've got a job to meet people like me in a funny way, you know. Because like I say, I don't like cars, never have done, you know. So I've got a bit of a different, I don't know, you know. I've had a different childhood to everyone else for some reason.
Well, not to everyone else,
well,
but
know,
maybe to a lot. Yeah.
Well, I feel like I was locked up in the cupboard, right, where most of the other children didn't. Okay, and you know, and I just look at my life, right, and today I've grown up, I'm learning actually, you know, as I'm getting older, I'm very different to a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
You know, because I would not get in the car. You know, that's not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
Or whatever, you know, or I'm just a little bit too compassionate to do that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? I love the rabbits and things. Do you know what I mean? For goodness sake, do you know what I mean? So how can I